They found it in the attic. The guards at the Canadian prisoner of war camp had heard rumors, strange sounds in the night, men hauling lumber up narrow staircases, whispers in German that stopped when footsteps approached. But no one expected this, a full-sized glider. Wingspan nearly 60 feet, body made from stolen floorboards, bed sheets, and dried porridge used as glue. Tucked into the rafters of an abandoned building, hidden behind false walls and blackout curtains. And it hadn't been a prank. They had built it to fly. It was 1945, the final year of the Second World War. And inside a remote Canadian POW camp, a group of captured German airmen had tried to do the impossible: escape by air. The story begins in the wilderness of Nova Scotia, at a place called Camp 30, better known as Island Camp, near the town of Bowmanville, Ontario. Though the camp was officially located in Ontario, the men who made headlines would later be transferred from Camp 30 to Camp 100 in Monteith, a former lumber town in northern Ontario. By 1940, Canada had begun accepting German prisoners of war from Britain. With the Battle of Britain underway and German U-boats haunting the Atlantic, the British were quickly overwhelmed by the influx of captured enemy soldiers and airmen. Canada, with its vast landscape, sparse population, and reputation for humane treatment, was the perfect place to hold them. More than 33,000 German POWs would be detained in Canada by the end of the war. They were fed well, treated fairly, given access to books, art supplies, and even sports equipment. Many picked up hobbies: woodworking, painting, even music. But some didn't settle. Some wanted to go home. Among the most restless were the Luftwaffe officers. Trained pilots, engineers, mechanics, they had been raised on precision, risk, and daring. And for men used to flying high-performance machines through combat zones, captivity felt like a prison far larger than any barbed wire fence. In Camp 100, a former lumber mill turned POW compound, a small group of German airmen began talking. Not about digging, not about hiding in laundry trucks, not about bribing guards, about flying. Because if anyone could build a plane from scratch, it was them. The man at the center of the plan was Oberleutnant Hans Werner Krauss. Captured in 1940, Krauss had been a reconnaissance pilot with the Luftwaffe. His plane had been shot down near the British coast, and after spending time in British custody, he was shipped to Canada. Charismatic, sharp, and obsessive, Krauss quickly gained a reputation among the POWs for dreaming big. Escape wasn't just a possibility to him, it was a necessity. And in 1944, he proposed something audacious. They would build a glider, not a toy, not a model, a real flyable glider, large enough to carry 1 or 2 men. It would launch from the roof of the prison building, soar over the guard towers, and land somewhere in the forest beyond. From there, the escapee would make their way to the St. Lawrence River, find a boat, and try to slip into the United States, still officially neutral until 1941, but viewed by some POWs as less dangerous than British-controlled Canada. It was bold, risky, borderline impossible. But Krauss wasn't alone. The glider was based loosely on the DFS-230, a light German military transport used in airborne operations. It had no engine. It relied entirely on initial launch momentum and pilot control. The POW version would be smaller, hand-built from whatever materials they could steal or scavenge. Wooden bed slats, floorboards, wire from light fixtures, nails bent straight, bed sheets stretched over wing frames, and porridge, yes, actual dried porridge, boiled down and used as adhesive where glue wasn't available. They worked in secret in the attic of the prison's main building, which had a high, sloping roof. It wasn't used for anything, too drafty, too unstable, and hard to access without being noticed, which made it perfect. A fake wall was erected to hide the growing fuselage. Guards never patrolled the attic. The few who did didn't know what to look for. Work was done at night. Boards were carried up one at a time, tucked inside coats or hidden in hollowed-out books. The prisoners developed code words to warn of approaching guards. They even rigged the attic door with a lookout system. 1 knock for clear, 2 for danger. By early 1945, the glider was nearly complete. It would be launched using a bungee cord system, strung across the rafters and anchored to the floor. The plan was to pull the glider back like a slingshot and fire it out through a cut section of the wall at the end of the attic, which faced a hill that dropped sharply behind the camp. The slope would provide just enough altitude for the glider to gain air. In theory. No one had tested it. No one had flown it. But Krauss believed it could work. He had already volunteered to be the pilot. Then, in late March 1945, just weeks before the war in Europe would end, guards made a routine inspection of the building, and one of them heard something. Creaking, hammering, voices where there shouldn't be voices. They climbed the stairs. What they found stunned them. The guards expected contraband, maybe radios, hoarded food, or escape tunnels. They found a glider. The wings were fully assembled. The frame was reinforced. The controls, rudder, elevator, ailerons, were hand-built from scrap metal and bicycle parts. Every piece had been fashioned without tools. And it was airworthy. The discovery made headlines across Canada. Reporters dubbed it the glider escape plot, and photographs were published showing astonished guards standing beside the half-disassembled craft. The camp's commandant later admitted he had never seen anything like it. Some Canadian officers were furious, but others, especially those with aviation backgrounds, were quietly impressed. One senior officer reportedly said, "It was foolish, but brilliant, and if they'd launched it, who knows?" The glider was destroyed. Krauss and his co-conspirators were placed in solitary confinement. But with the war ending, there was little appetite for punishment. Within months, they were repatriated back to Germany with other POWs. None of the men had ever flown the glider, but they'd come closer than anyone thought possible. Years later, historians would look back on the glider plot with fascination. It had all the elements of a great escape story: ingenuity, secrecy, rebellion. But it also revealed something deeper about the men who fought in World War II. Even when imprisoned thousands of miles from home, surrounded by fences, guards, and winter, some refused to surrender their sense of agency. They had no engines, no blueprints, no hope of success, but they had imagination. And for a brief moment in an attic above a Canadian prison camp, they believed they could fly. Thank you for listening to Last Post History. Subscribe for more true stories from the world at war.